Hello and welcome to 12 Angry Films, part The Godfather Part 2.
12 Angry Films, part The Godfather Part 2, Quad-Trilogy, The Godfather Part 2.
I guess it's round 2, part 3, I want to say. Because we're in the second film in each trilogy and it's the third one that we're doing.
Do we do them in order? Do we release them as like one whole film at once?
I don't know,
Our schedule is completely fucked, Tony. I don't even know when we're releasing. Also, you might want to plug that in.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Look at that, look at those dates. They're just completely random. It's just whenever.
This should just
Really
be
keep
the
them down on
thumbnail
their
for the
toes.
video.
Yeah, you know, I like to leave it so we completely overwhelm Rowan. So I like to imagine him just being on YouTube and then suddenly getting like 20 of our things at one go and having to scroll past for a few
Me and
days.
Jonathan talked to Danny the other day, and actually he's got a bit of a backlog going. He's not been up to date as he should be.
You got stuck on Retcon. It's like, sorry, I can't find the 6 hours and 20 minutes.
You gotta listen
started
to
it
it.
when it came out, and he's been watching it
Think-
like piece by piece.
Think about it. You could watch The Two Towers and The Godfather Part 2 in that length of time. That's a far more productive way to spend your time. See it. The Godfather Part 2, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, written by Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo. It's pretty much the same people that made Part 1, but they were just like, you know what's be really good? We made more money. So,
But you know what's changed, right? The actor who played Clemenza, his wife got involved.
oh yeah. I think we'll get onto that when we talk.
Scriptwriter.
When we talk about the best character in the film, we'll come on to whether it should have been Clemenza or not, which it shouldn't have. Because
It's definitely
all right.
shouldn't have.
So yeah, a couple of years later, The Godfather Part 2. Some of its source material is completely original. Puzo and Coppola continue where we left off last with Michael Corleone having taken. He's now the Godfather. You know, you follow him, and they took from the source material of the original novel, and you follow the young Vito Corleone. Emigrating from Corleone to New York and kind of growing in his stature as a don. So yeah, this film critically is pretty much considered on par with the original. I think it's easy to lump them in together because they're so kind of intertwined in you can't have part 2 without part 1 basically. This one was nominated for a lot more Oscars. I think in the year, Best Supporting Actor was like pretty much all of the cast of this film. It was pretty insane. But so yeah, I think when you see rankings, there's often The Godfather at the top and then part 2 just below it. But when you speak to people, you actually hear a lot more people saying that they prefer part 2. It's the you get those people like, well, actually, I think the smart choice for this would be I don't know, because The Godfather is slightly shorter and more action packed, kind of more plot focused, whereas Godfather Part 2 is a lot slower and a lot more character driven. This film very famously brought Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, who kind of at the time and then both went on to be the kind of greatest actors of that generation together in a film. I mean, they didn't appear together until Heat, famously. You can obviously De Niro, you could say, went on to achieve better things, and Pacino just started shouting a lot.
I mean, Pacino, he became Dunk.
Exactly. I mean, De Niro was in Dirty Grandpa. They both made bad films. But yeah.
But I feel like Robert De Niro had a much longer stretch before he resorted to making worse films, whereas Pacino kind of... I feel like after the Godfather films and Dog Day Afternoon, to my mind, I can't... And Scarface, I guess, I can't really remember anything he's done after that that's actually been like on par with old Robert De Niro films.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of underrated ones, right? Like people say Carlito's Way is a great film. And
Yeah, I suppose so.
That's kind of-
so.
yeah. I guess De Niro was just worked with Scorsese a lot.
Yeah.
Which meant he was in a lot of... If you took away the Scorsese films that De Niro's in, it's a lot less kind of...
Yeah.
But, yeah. Why do I like The Godfather Part 2? Because I do. I think I prefer it to the original. And it's been a bit of a kind of joke between me and Ethan about, is it good or not? He doesn't like it as much, but I do. I think part of the reason I consider it better, and like I always put it, like if I was doing a list, I'd always put The Godfather Part 2, not the original, is in liking Part 2, you are kind of confessing your love for the original, because you kind of... My theory, anyways, it's pretty impossible to enjoy this film if you don't already enjoy The Godfather, because it is the perfect sequel in the way that it is. It wraps itself around. It's like DLC for The Godfather. It just expands that story in a way. It builds on
3 hours of extra footage.
It builds on before and it builds on after The Godfather. and it's such a perfect continuation. I mean, my favorite game of all time is a sequel. My favorite film of all time is a sequel. But I would go as far as to say this is probably the best sequel. Toy Story 2 is really good as well. But like in terms of like advancing a narrative, it's pretty much perfect in that way. Should we talk about the film?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, that's my introduction. I think the easiest person to go to for this is Tony. No.
Okay.
No.
I'll do it because I'm the guy who knows the least.
Yeah, Tony.
So
What's the plot of the Godfather?
This will be a true test of. So basically, we left the Godfather, the first one, with the death of Don. I'm going to be bad with the names, but I think I do know the characters, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the old Don had died, right, in Godfather, and so it passed to his son who didn't want it. Again, I think it's Michael, right?
Yeah.
Michael, okay. And he is now, he assumes the role of the Godfather. And so this film sort of cuts between, I think, fairly 50-50 split between the future of Michael and the origin story of the original Don Vito. And so it follows Don Vito getting revenge on the person who killed his mother and father and two brothers.
Just one brother.
One brother. Okay. And the future guy Vito, he is in this duel with Hyman Roth.
I think Michael, you mean?
Michael, sorry, yeah, Michael Roth. Michael Corleone. He's in this sort of extended like legal battle with Hyman Roth, and it gets in a lot of other subplots of him with the Rosato brothers, with his wife. There's a lot of problems he has to deal with. But basically, it's about him killing all of his enemies again, like how he ended the first film. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I would say that I'm not 100% sure on which one I like more. I think I might come down more on liking this one more. But there are a few parts that I did prefer about the first one. I felt like the first one, like it was a bit clearer with Salozzo, and then eventually the 5 heads of the other families, like what was the beef, like what was going on in like the wider scope. Whereas this, I feel like you are quite in the dark about it until fairly later on. I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like it takes a bit longer to get going.
Well, because no, I actually kind of agree with you. I remember when I watched this film quite a long time ago, I think, and I originally wasn't a massive fan of it because I felt like that it wasn't very plot heavy. It kind of left you in the dark, and I started to get kind of frustrated with it a little bit. I remember liking the De Niro stuff a lot because it was clear cut for me. I knew what was happening, I knew where it was going, and Michael I think it was the fact that at the beginning he talks to Hyman Roth and says, "Oh, it was Pentangeli who was responsible for the attack on the compound," and then just goes to speak to Pentangeli afterwards straight away and says basically the same thing, but actually no, it was Roth responsible. So it was kind of difficult for me to see what Michael's kind of end game plan was. And then I feel as the film progresses, I think now that I've grown up a little bit more, I understand the plot perfectly well. But when I was younger, the whole courtroom stuff kind of came out of nowhere for me. I didn't really see any leading up to it. And now it kind of it flows a lot better for me. I understand the logic and how the sequences in the film kind of transform into one another, if that makes sense.
I mean, I would say it does pick up a rhythm. It does find that path eventually. But for a 3-hour-long film, 3 hours 20 minutes, it would have been, I don't know, a bit. I mean, the De Niro stuff does set out pretty early on, like, hey, here's this guy, we're gonna fuck him up.
Yeah. You also know the ending of that story though as well, which is because it's kind of got to fulfill that prequel purpose of kind of
how did he get where he was,
giving him his defining characteristics. And like you said that earlier, 50-50, but I think I disagree. I think it's very much 70-30 in favour of Michael.
That might be true.
Like, I feel like the only reason the Vito stuff is in there is because with the editing, it serves as the kind of perfect like contrast of Michael. Like the line, the famous line, I can't remember who wrote it about this, is Vito is a man that starts the film with literally nothing and then ends it with everything. And then you take Michael, the man who starts with everything, and then the final shot, just him completely isolated. And I feel like that's kind of following the rise of Vito with the fall of Michael, and like him kind of destroying the family by lacking what Vito had, basically because he had the heart of his. Yeah, because each of the children kind of carries a characteristic of Vito, and Vito kind of he has the heart of Fredo with the kind of the cold ruthlessness of Michael.
Where does Sonny's hot-headedness come from?
I mean, he's got anger, right? You know, he stabs that guy.
Yeah, I suppose.
Sonny's hot head comes from his curly hair.
Sonny's got sort of. I know it doesn't work out for him in the end, but he does sort of have the strength and kind of the ferocity to sort of protect his family.
I suppose that's true.
Yeah, he's definitely like a wartime Don.
Yeah,
You know, he's a wartime consigliere.
when someone abuses a sister, like his first reaction will be to defend his sister and go and hit
That's
the guy.
probably
So.
one of the Sonny highlights. Top 10 Sonny moments.
When he got shot on the causeway.
Yeah.
In fairness, if you were doing a top 10 Sony moments, I think 3 of them would be out of this film, and he has one scene in this film right at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right at the end I was like, oh, Sonny, I was coming around on this film and you showed me him.
In fact, speaking of the ending, I'm sure we'll probably talk more about the ending, but one of the moments that I really like, having already seen the film and the first film, was right at the end you find out that James Caan, I've already forgotten his name, Sonny is the one who introduces Carlo to his sister.
Yeah.
Right, and it's really interesting having those very short but neat little moments that kind of paint the first film in a different light when you go back and rewatch it.
That's true, that's neat.
And that's why I really dislike this idea of the Godfather saga, that it was they cut together the first and second film and played it in chronological order on TV across 4 nights. Because that's like the worst. Imagine viewing the Godfather Part 2 without the editing. You know, I feel like I think the ending is so perfect because you get shown. It cuts from Michael having ordered the killing of his brother to a scene of them all kind of at a table just before Michael's about to go off, to the young kind of Michael and Vito on the train, to him completely alone, and just like I just felt that's such a kind of powerful moment. But like, if you were to view that chronologically, those scenes would be just all over the place and it just wouldn't work as well. I feel like the kind of the structure of the prequel sequel together thing was so kind of unique for a film as well. I mean, like, obviously Citizen Kane had all the flashbacks and stuff, but like literally like splitting the film up into following 2 characters. I mean, like people still say today, like, oh, they Godfather, like, Mamma Mia, here we go again. You know, they did a Godfather Part 2. It's such a great structure for a film. Johnny, what did you think?
So it didn't. I don't know. I find it interesting with this one because I feel I followed this one a lot more than the first one. I had a better idea of who the characters actually were in this one. So when it came down to having basically the same end of the first one, I at least knew those characters being killed, which was more than I did in the first one.
I do think the 5-head death is like, I'm kind of not that sold on it. It's like,
And it's not just that as well. You have like sort of henchmen who get killed off towards the first film, and I mean, I guess I know their names. I know a little bit about them because I've seen the first film so many times.
you
But
know
when
who
you're
your
first
first one
watch,
is.
yeah. But I mean, who knows who Tessio is? Like, he's just a background sort of character. So I do see where Jonathan's coming from.
So I had a better idea of who the characters were. Just a sort of running problem I have with the whole thing is just the kind of feeling of everything gets solved in the least exciting way.
Yeah, I mean, this film is essentially the Cold War, right? In the first film's got these explosive, action-packed moments, you know. They're not too. It's not too much. I'm not talking about like a fucking John Wick or whatever. But
It's the Iraq War.
yeah, there's way more that happens. It's basically World War II, right? Whereas this is very much Roth and Michael don't really move against each other, and all the big kind of climactic set piece in Cuba is essentially one man trying to kill Roth behind the scenes, you know, and him ordering the assassination of Michael, which he sees through. So this one is it is less action packed.
But then you'd feel they'd counterbalance that with having intrigue, but it's the least intriguing intrigue I have seen.
Yeah, I mean, I like Roth as a villain.
Don't you remember that gold telephone, Jono, that they pass around? That's Chekhov's golden telephone.
Yeah, I enjoy Roth as a villain. I mean, it is obviously a lot slower, and it's a lot of them kind of like being incredibly passive aggressive to each other, and kind of like trying to show each other.
I also think there is quite a bit of intrigue because I think the first major moment of the film to me is when Michael's looking out the window and someone just like tears through it, and you wonder.
That's like 40 minutes in, by the way.
Okay, all right, fair enough. But when you have that moment, you start to have these questions of who did that, how did they even get into the compound, and I think as the film heads towards a specific point that you know is going to come, where you realise that Fredo was was involved and Michael's going to have to confront him about it, then that intrigue kind of gets resolved.
Yeah, and you could also say that instead of the explosive moments, you have explosive kind of Pacino bit, like in my home. You know, you have those kind of.
That is true.
Great
Actually,
scenes,
I feel like in the first film, Al Pacino is a lot more kind of. I feel like he has the same sort of acting technique in this film, where he comes off as very cold-blooded and very kind of like. Yeah, like cold face. He doesn't really. He doesn't.
I'm still waiting for him to pull another facial expression.
Yeah,
I wonder if he'll do it.
I made the same joke.
Those eyes, man.
I mean, the eyes
piercing
are
eyes.
But what I was going to say was that in this second film, at least there are moments throughout where he does have this sort of sudden burst of energy, where he does go from 0 to 10 very, very quickly, and it shows his temper.
Literally, one of my favourite moments in this film is just like he's like he gets convinced by Kay to like forgive his brother. And so he goes to hug Fredo, and as he's hugging
I think it's the sister. It's the sister.
Yeah, Connie. He hugs Fredo, and then he's just, as he's hugging him, he just looks over to his bodyguard, and there's just like a very subtle like nod, and you're like, oh no.
That is because, especially like knowing like exactly how that all plays out, it is such a kind of heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, when we watched it, and the moment where Al Pacino does come out of that room and you don't know what side he's going to land on, and then he hugs Fredo, and Fredo looks... it looks like he feels so kind of reassured. It's a really heart-wrenching moment. I practically covered my eyes because I know what's going to happen, having already seen the film and what side it's actually going to come down on.
I just have no investment in Fredo or
Al
Pacino.
I love Fredo.
You stepped over.
That's such a great scene. Like he does the least convincing delivery of the line "I'm smart." Like I just love like just the quivering "I'm smart." Like he's kind of because I don't know.
I think it's a really well acted scene.
Yeah,
I think it's probably his best.
But that's what I mean. Like Fredo is kind of so kind of pathetic in that moment, and just the way he's framed.
The chair he's sitting on.
Yeah,
it's not.
You also got the phrase "Mickey Mouse nightclub." That's such a. Also, wait, very quickly.
Do you not sort of... I don't know, I feel like from the very onset of this film, Fredo does come across as a character who is, as Harry said, kind of like a bit of a loser. I mean, you see how his wife treats him and everything, and I just kind of feel sorry for him. Like, he's someone who I don't think can stand up for himself, and you want him to have a bit more kind of power and a bit more self-confidence.
He's definitely contrasted with the kind of cold brutality of Michael, in that he's just not cut out for the world, which is like... And the scene...
Are you going to talk about the scene that I'm talking about? The best scene is when they're talking... Where they
Superman. This film is funny, by the way. But,
in fact, most of the comic relief probably comes from Pentangeli. He just is the funniest character.
Yeah. But when he goes to Cuba, and I think Michael knows it's Fredo, but he just doesn't want to... He doesn't want to know it's Fredo. So I love those scenes where he's like... He has a meeting with him and he kind of suspects, but Fredo doesn't really give anything up. So for me anyway, because obviously a lot of his kind of coldness, you have to project yourself onto what he's thinking. But I feel in that moment he knows it's Fredo, but he's not going to do anything about it. And it's only in that scene where Fredo reveals that he knew who Johnny Ola was, when Michael is just kind of, you can just see the devastation. And then that really, probably the most famous moment of the film in Cuba, where he grabs him and kisses him and then tells him he broke his heart. That's kind of... Al Pacino's really good. I'm going to defend Al Pacino. I mean, it's not...
Yeah, I think so. I've changed my opinion of him. I think the thing that I dislike, I guess, the most about Al Pacino is that even though I think in this film he is a lot better than I remember him to be, I think if you look at the final product from the first film, I just don't think he's... I think he's changed in the way that he acts, but I think his whole kind of physique, his facial expressions are just the same as how he started in the first film. There hasn't been much of a change on that front for me. Like, he just didn't smile in the first film at all either.
He didn't smile.
Does he not smile at the wedding?
He starts off as a Becky. No, he's a much...
Fair enough.
He's a very different person.
All I'm saying is that in this film, it's kind of... From what I remember, it's hard to kind of latch onto a character who doesn't show that much emotion. And my problem with him in the first film is that he starts off that way, and there isn't really much of a change or an arc to who he becomes. But if we're looking at this film from a standalone point, then his performance, I think, is really good. Yeah,
I can see someone not empathising or particularly finding him like easy to latch onto, because the Godfather is kind of taking him, who's kind of uninterested in his family business, to kind of becoming the Don and sacrificing some of his humanity to do that. This film takes him from that point, which is already a pretty low point for a character, and goes, can a man lose his soul? And essentially ends with the answer, yes. And you kind of just... it's essentially a man doing increasingly horrific things. But I don't know, I feel like when I watch There Will Be Blood, I don't particularly like Daniel Plainview, but I find him kind of captivating and interesting in that way, and that's there's a fascination about Michael.
He is a lot more captivating than Michael is to me. In answer to a question you asked me a while ago, I don't see how you can like There Will Be Blood and not this.
Because they scratch the same itch for me.
But Daniel Day-Lewis does more with that. Michael just gives a very monotone performance, except for some.
It's
I'm
not
not saying I
understated.
dislike his performance, but Daniel Day-Lewis is just at the top of his game throughout the entire film and does change it up.
I mean, like the film, it's not. It's not like you have to. It's not like In the Mood for Love, where you have to analyze every frame to understand what's going on. It's subtle, but it's there.
So Johnny, what do you think?
There Will Be Blood is better.
I just saw what you're trying to.
Actually, maybe they're about the same level for me.
I've lost some of my, because I mostly have. I just couldn't get behind this film. So it was similar with the first one. And just, I think one of the things is just no one's. The whole film just feels like a kind of for what? I mean, I guess kind of the purpose is they're just trying to increase the money they get or stay on the sort of small platform they're on just cause. But it's just very unsatisfying when no one seems happy about the position they're in, and
that's true.
Yeah, they're doing all this shit to be in it.
Yeah,
it's so hard to get behind these characters.
I guess the De Niro stuff is the opposite, because that's a rise to glory, whereas this is a fall from grace.
Uninteresting rise to glory, though. It's literally just he's there, and then just a guy chucks him some guns, and so he does nothing, and then he gets brought in just hey, here's a rug, you want to steal it? And he's like. No. And then
so that is true, but what
and then you jump, and then it's I'll make him an offer he can't refuse, says the line. I love the other day I was talking to my brother about this and misquoted that line as well, make him an offer he can't confuse. That's how much that made of him. That's how little I care about
I do agree with
and then just alright, I'll pay him 100, see how that goes. It's going to be you got balls, walks out, okay. And then just later he just kills him. Okay.
Could have just played 6.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see how you use this power vacuum to, make your way to the... right, you're the Don now. Okay.
Just cut the head.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that he is the Godfather by the end of the second film.
But he has a lot of respect, very suddenly.
No, I think that you
True.
see a little bit of it. But I mean, it's not like the film is I don't think the film is going to spend ages focusing on all the little people who are in that neighbourhood who kind of like him. I think by the end of the film you do get a sort of sense of people kind of respect him and they look for him when they have problems and issues that need resolving. I think the film does a good job establishing that. On the contrary, hang on.
Yeah, sure.
The other thing I was going to say is that I actually find it really satisfying to watch the story that starts off with a character who's been so clearly wronged by some mafia don. Who's killed this person's entire family, and then he goes to America, makes a bit of a name for himself, and then comes back and exacts
the American dream.
It's such a
Still alive.
I feel like it's a really tightly knit kind of story. It starts off somewhere and then goes back to it, and then he exacts revenge, and then it's just it's a complete story for me.
Well, it takes you away from the whole what's going on in Corleone.
But
so
I'm not
the
interested by
revenge is so
what happens in Corleone. I'm more interested in what happens in New York with De Niro and what he does there, and then he goes back.
The revenge is so
Vito Andalini.
the revenge is so detached from the story by the time
that
he
is
gets to
true.
revenge. I mean, but it's a thing I
it's
do
not like he can
appreciate
go back when
about
he's 9
it
years
because
old, right? I mean, he has to grow up a little bit.
yeah, but if it was as you're saying a tightly knit revenge subplot, there'd be this kind of feeling of I'm training so I get back at him. I'm doing this.
It doesn't feel like his revenge
There's
was
just-
motivating.
there's
to
just
get power.
This is what
He
my
just sort
life
of
is
does
now.
it,
This
to
is
be
what
fair.
my life is now. Oh, is that the time? Better go to Italy and murder a guy. But the
I
reason
see
why
what
I
you mean.
give it a pass for that is because I think what it's going for is you see this such old and decrepit like Don. He's
It's kind of pathetic.
It's
isn't
the
it?
it's the Red Dead redemption end of just like, yeah, your revenge meant nothing. Why?
And that's-
Why?
And that definitely ties into the Michael side, because in the first film, the killing of the 5 families it's an act of brutality, but it's also kind of justified by the film. Like, it's not like Michael can't do that. It's like he's choosing to win the war that way instead of just not having one. Whereas in this film, the montage of people who are being killed, all of them are kind of small, pathetic acts that don't need to be taken. The fact that Michael, Tom Hagen as well, played by Robert Duvall, is fantastic as Michael's kind of moral compass.
Yeah,
And the
Tom
scene
Hagen
where
is the best
the
character.
scene where he tells Tom,
that's
like,
true.
I don't need to wipe everyone out, Tom, just my enemies. And the fact that he considers his brother, who's kind of at the completely, like, he's at the bottom, he'll do anything for his brother. You know, he just wants to be let back into the family. He'll kill him. Frank Pentangeli, I mean, that one, Tom kind of is told to tell Frank, you know, like, do the right thing here, mate, and kill yourself. And then Hyman Roth, who's kind of, he can't do anything. He's kind of completely beyond his power. All his allies have scattered. They risk one of their own men's lives just to kill Hyman Roth, who's already on his deathbed.
Yeah,
he is
That's true,
the
but
whole film.
I do kind of buy the fact that Hyman Roth is sold as like a massive like liar throughout the entire film. You know, like they say he's been dying of a heart attack for 20 years.
I like that part of his personality where he just like, I think Michael even says like how he thinks he'll never die, and that's kind of what a lot of what motivates him. But then I was thinking like, oh, okay, so he's just kind of angry. He wants to live forever. But then it kind of, in that scene where he reveals his true motivation, that it's
So
just
he was just a Jew trying to live out his twilight years in Israel.
no, it's
with
Mo
Mo
Green.
Green. I really like that scene a lot.
Yeah.
It's the line from the first one, you know, like, it's just business, not personal. But for Hyman Roth against Michael, it is completely personal, you know, and he's that's the retribution he's seeking for his acts in Godfather 1. Also, Robert De Niro is really fucking good. Like, if you're gonna get someone to play the young Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro is pretty much perfect in that role.
Yeah, I think. I mean, he doesn't look anything like Marlon Brando, but I think
Some
what
of
makes
his face and the voice, I think.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say I think it more comes from the voice and other parts of his performance.
He's got the cotton wool in his cheeks.
Yeah. Like, especially the parts where he's speaking English, not Italian. He's got that kind of coarse sort of like sort of thing to him. So it's a very, very convincing performance, I think. And it's also the kind of, I mean, I know Robert De Niro didn't have the name that he had at the time, but looking back now, I mean, the person to play a younger version of a character played by Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, is your only fit. He's the only person who could pull something like that off of that stature.
Yeah.
So it's a great pick, I think.
I think my favourite part of the De Niro stuff is him with dealing with the landlord and the rent, and just the fact that the guy comes back and it's like, you here's the money, you know, I'll lower the rent.
Yeah, so that's a comical scene. Like, that guy's just completely chewing the scenery. He just like can't get the door open, and I don't know. I still think the set piece that just before the you have the intermission where he kills Don Fanucci is so fantastically done.
I think the lighting as well, when he actually gets into the house, is what makes that scene so good. The fact there's a faulty light and he fixes it and then opens the door and turns around and he's just there. But
I mean, that's iconic. But I love the music. I love that kind of all the symbols of the parade. You know, and Fanucci's like, too violent. He grabs the orange, you know, that bringing back that symbolism from the first.
I think
one.
the way Fanucci gets introduced is great as well. Like, he's this kind of, because they're sat in a theatre, right? And then I think it's Henko insults him and he gets up and then Henko immediately apologises. And you know automatically everything you need to know about this guy Fanucci.
It's just that great scene where De Niro is driving along and then Fanucci just jumps on. It's like, eh? Just smiling at him. If we're doing the comedy, we got to talk about Frank Pentangeli, who is the best character in this film by miles.
I like him a lot.
It was
I think his best moment is when he's at the court hearing. His brother's sat there, and they're like, "So did the FBI say this, blah blah blah?" And he was like, "Yeah, whatever, sure." They asked me questions. I said, "Yeah, why not?"
Yeah, like, I think the story goes it was initially going to be Clemenza, but Clemenza, the actor who plays Clemenza's wife, who's also his agent, who also plays his wife in Godfather 1, demanded that she write all of the characters' dialogue. So they were just like, no, you can't do that. You can't have a screenwriting credit on this film for one character. So they couldn't. So they created this new character. You know, they do the thing they do in part 3 as well of just killing people, actors who won't come back off screen. And the guy who plays Pantangeli is brilliant. He's like you say, he's really funny, and it ties into that kind of late second act, beginning of third act courtroom stuff. That kind of you think Roth's been defeated, but then he kind of you suddenly remember that very strange scene where they try and kill him, you know. At the time, makes zero sense. You're like, Michael Corleone sends his regards, it's like a botched assassination, the police come in, but then you realise that it was all a setup for Roth to kind of get him to testify.
Yeah.
And those courtroom scenes are so... It almost snaps into kind of documentary mode. Like it's so stark the way it's shot and framed. It feels incredibly real. Like I love the... when we watched it... we paused and just stared at the kind of the board they have up of illustrating the Corleone kind of family tree, and just the level of detail that went into. Also, the fact that early on in the film, you have at the very start of the Pacino stuff, you have the christening, which is very similar to the wedding of the first, but you have the way that senator treats him. You know, like he just completely disrespectful, like I hate the Italian Americans, you know, using all the kind of the slurs, and then you get the payoff in that courtroom scene where he testifies like Italian Americans, some of them are my best friends, you know, like you got that you get that payoff of Senator Geary, is it?
Yeah, Geary. It's a shame that my issue with that is that I do like that part where he reverses his position just because of how Tom Hagen has helped him before, but I still feel like the dead prostitute stuff should have gone somewhere more than it did. It kind of it was a scene that felt like it would pay off, and then nothing really happened.
It doesn't pay off.
It's one of those
not a huge
side story though.
Yeah, but I feel like
it's already a long film.
Yeah, but I feel like there should have been a more blatant moment where they say, "Hey, look, we covered this up for you. Now it's your turn to help us back."
You
can
sort of
you know
imply
that's
that,
going
to be
right.
fair.
I don't know. I was just expecting more from Geary. He's just such a character of like he pops up that way. Is that Geary? Is that the Geary guy? Is
it Geary? 3 scenes, right?
I mean, he's in Cuba, I think. Right? They show him around.
I think he's randomly in Cuba for a bit.
Yeah,
I do like Cuba. I really like the revolution just happening in the background.
Yeah, I do quite like that scene where they're just driving, and then there's like you're taking a bunch of people out of the house, line them up in the wall, and then one of them's just turned around and jumped into a car with a police officer.
And the comment about that's why they'll win. You know?
Yeah, I really like that because that's the good parallel to the Don's own, like the fact that everyone will eventually turn against him. You know.
The fact that this film created the saying "keep your friends close, your enemies closer" as well. Like I always forget that comes from this film.
Yeah,
I was just
It's a much better one than sleeping with the fishes. You know.
Yeah.
Which, that is in the first one, isn't it?
Yeah. The first one probably has more iconic lines though. It's got like "leave the gun, take the cannoli."
I mean, I think the most famous quote from The Godfather is that one: "I'll make him an offer he can't refuse." That's what everyone knows about it. Yeah. The transitions as well between old and new in the film, I think, are done really, really well. I think the best one, maybe not the best one, but I think the
first one with De Niro, where
it's
Michael looking out the window.
That one is fantastic. That is fantastic. And then I do quite like the one where it's like a very young version of Vito when he's just a kid on Staten Island or wherever, and then it transitions to his grandson at his christening. And that is really.
I mean, I love the very beginning prologue, you know, of getting the origin story of Vito. It is a little bit Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, give him all his character traits. But just him coming across on the boat, you know, and seeing just that image is kind of so powerful, and you're seeing a lot of kind of media about the immigrants coming to America at that time.
Can I just say how it literally has a Star Wars story moment of
they butchered it, because in my mind the way it is that Vito is scared and doesn't remember his own name, and it has on his label Vito Corleone. That's where he gets it from. But like, it literally has Vito Andolini from Corleone, but the border guard is just ignorant.
So what I remember from the book
doesn't do it properly.
Yeah. What I remember from the book, I think pretty well. This stuck with me, so I think I am right about this. Mario Puzo originally wrote it so that he was called Vito Andolini, but then he changed his surname to Corleone as a reminder of where he came from, what he had to go back and do, the stuff that he left unresolved. And that's why he chose to change his name. And it wasn't something that happened. It wasn't like some patrol guy, some border patrol person who just said, you know what, fuck it, you're called Corleone now, or whatever. But
Vito, Solo.
That's the other. That's the other thing I really like actually about the De Niro stuff. I feel like you not only get a really good sense of location, but I think it paints a really vivid image of what New York looked back in the time. I mean, we talked about this yesterday.
It's really authentic.
We get a sense of community with the market stalls, and you can practically. It's almost as if you can like smell what's coming off the streets, because it feels like such a dense portrayal of that sort of neighbourhood around that time. I really, really like it a lot.
Especially as the Michael storyline doesn't take place in New York. There's only one or two scenes in New York. You know, he's in Nevada and he goes to Cuba. You know, and so I feel like in terms of keeping the film about New York, which the first one basically is, like pretty much the whole first film is set there. It's really important for that kind of stuff. Yeah. It also means that you don't just keep saying the same streets. You don't have the contrast. You know, the contrast is more between the characters.
We've not talked too much about Michael and Kay.
We haven't, because the film doesn't. I don't know. It's definitely it's not. If this film, if you're looking at the plot lines of this film, it's probably the C or D kind of plot line. There's some great moments, like obviously Michael and Tom's scenes are pretty much the best scenes in the film anyway. Yeah. But the one where he asks him, "What did you get Anthony?" You know, and then he comes back to the compound and sees that red car, and then finds out about Kay's miscarriage in quotation marks, and then obviously. Back in the Mediate 2013 episode where we talked about the Wolf of Wall Street, I mentioned the scene between Michael and Kay, the argument scene they have, as an example of something that, you know...
I was waiting for Michael to like, open a pillow and sniff a bunch of cocaine.
so yeah, I mean that scene is pretty incredible.
I'll tell you what, if you want to see Al Pacino taking a shitload of cocaine, just watch Scarface, because it'll just be 3 hours of that pretty much.
Diane Keaton, who's like perhaps underserved, but I'm definitely underserved by the film, like giving her like a pretty great scene. I mean, I'm going to say about 10 times during this podcast, oh yeah, this is the best scene.
Actually, no, you know what? That you just reminded me. I think one of my favourite scenes with Michael is the one where he shows a little bit of humanity and care for the family. Do you remember when he speaks to his mum about what to do?
Yeah.
And everything. I really like that scene a lot as well, actually. I think that's a good contrast to what we know about him as a character and what we've seen, like an abundance of throughout these past two films.
I think I could spend this whole podcast going through scene by scene. Oh, this is a really good scene because I like when Michael does this, and I like the lighting in this scene. So I'm kind of interested to get other perspectives. You know?
I do think that I made the mistake of maybe watching. I don't remember. Did we watch the first one together?
Yeah, we definitely.
I think
did.
The room was way too well lit because I watched it in darkness. You know, tried to watch it in the second one in darkness, and it. You know, it does a lot of things with like lighting half of someone's face, and I noticed it a lot more in the second one. It was that's cool.
We started watching it, and I had the blinds open, so it had this weird kind of glare that was sort of difficult. And then I closed the blinds, and then in the indoor scenes where you do have like that really stark kind of shadow, where you almost have like someone's eyes almost unlit because of the way that lighting works, I think is it's a lot easier to see, isn't it, in a darker room?
Yeah, the outdoor and indoor kind of contrast. It's especially this is more prominent in the first one. It's so stark, you know. Especially now, that's why the wedding scene in the first one works so well. Because you've got the life and like the buzz of the outdoor, and then it goes like it's pretty much pitch black, and it's all close-ups, you know, just these intense meetings between people. Anyway,
I was also surprised by how much. This might sound like a joke, but I wouldn't say it was a fast-paced film at all. I know it's slow-paced, but the time definitely felt like it went by quite quickly for me. Like I remember when I first watched it, it felt like it felt so slow. It felt like a hog. Honestly, it was like we sat there for like seemingly 3 hours, and it had been half an hour. And then when I watched it with Harry the other day, it was like before I noticed like an hour and a half of the film had already gone by. It just felt like more happened than I remembered, and I'm so glad that I went back to rewatch it. I remember so well the moment when I first watched the film with one of my friends. The moment where we just completely lost interest was the scene where Pantangeli, they try and kill him in the bar, and then this fucking street fight just comes out of the blue outside.
I totally forgot about that scene.
Yeah. And that's the one where we're like, where are these coming from? Because the thing that we didn't really understand was the whole conflict between Roth and Michael.
Because that pays off. Like, you have to wait like an hour and a half for that to pay off. It's kind of like it is such a random moment.
Yeah.
I think the cutting between the two timelines and the fact this film just has an intermission does help with its pacing. And the intermission is at the perfect time as well. Like you should if you're not pausing at that moment and either waiting a day or getting up for 15 minutes and like just going to have a drink, you know, and stop watching the film. Yeah, because it also so well splits apart the conflict between Michael and Hyman Roth and Vito and Don, what's his name, Felucci? Yeah. And then the second half, which is the getting revenge part. Pretty much all of the second half is some of it's the congressional testimony, I guess, congressional hearing, and Michael and his bro, kind of how he's dealing with Fredo. You know, that's what the second half is, and it's a lot kind of darker in its tone, I guess. The second half it's less satisfying and more kind of gut wrenching, and as I've mentioned a few times, and I will continue to mention till the day I die, the final shot I just love so much. I love the way the camera just pulls in on Michael as he's all alone, and he seems to kind of age, and then all he does is he just shows he's still got his wedding ring, but he's kind of completely isolated and attached to the past. You know, he's still dwelling in what his father kind of built up and what he's screwed away, and like pretty much everyone has left him. Even Tom's kind of lost confidence in him. It's just him all alone. It's such a kind of great image to leave the film on, and they could have ended it there, but they didn't.
Yeah, I mean there is. I don't know if they always intended to make a part 3.
They definitely didn't.
If they didn't, okay, well then maybe this is a bit different. But it does sort of feel like there's this sort of implied feeling that like he will always have to, like there will never be a point where he can like just sit and like stop because there will always be people, you know, coming for him. There will never be a point where he's satisfied with the amount of power he's got, or someone else is not trying to take it from him. I don't know. I thought it would have been better to have a more final statement on that, if it makes sense. Like I was sort of thinking of like, is it going to end on his death? You know, not knowing whatever part 3's about.
I mean, the part 3's original title was The Death of Michael Corleone.
Okay, fair enough.
You can assume that Michael Corleone does die.
I was gonna say, like, okay, so this does have what I think is the middle sequel problem of not being like the conclusion to a part of a trilogy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I always hate to call this a trilogy, because I know if you're looking at its dictionary definition of 3 films, of course this is a trilogy. But the first is such a complete film, the story it tells, and this is such a complete story.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of trilogies do start with one complete film, and then because they then see the success of that, they make a trilogy. So the first one's good, and the final one's good because it's the conclusion of the trilogy, and the middle one sort of does have a feeling of like, well, this is sort of just an Isengard tower that we have to destroy for the sake of destroying a tower in this film, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say this.
But it is good.
Because this isn't really a middle part in a trilogy. This was made 2 years or 4 years maybe after the original, and then you have about 16 years, and then you get part 3, which is kind of the epilogue to the story.
Having said that, I feel like if they were going to conclude it with a third film, it can only be done by, you know, waiting a while till Al Pacino and the character that he plays actually ages a little bit, so he could come off as more reflective.
Because I don't want to spoil part 3, but it's very much about Michael is almost unrecognisable in his regret, and it's about him essentially seeking. It's a lot more of a religious film. It's about him kind of trying to seek absolution for his crimes and trying to start over. But meanwhile, the past keeps, just when he thought he was out, they pull him back in. You know, it's that line. Johnny, Godfather Part 2.
Should we slap some scores on it?
Nah, I think Johnny should. Unless you don't have anything else to say, unless it's so much of a ponyo for you, and you have nothing to contribute like I did.
Yeah, I mean,
I need to hear some dissent.
Because
probably a 6.
Do you like it more than the first one, Jonathan?
7.
I do like it more, but what that means is I'm lowering the previous one down to a 5.
Yeah, I did get that feeling of a similar feeling to that too, Johnny.
Yeah. I wish there was more with the hearing, because that promised to be interesting and then just got over very quickly. And I don't know, for a film that is 3 hours and 17 minutes before you hit the credits, it doesn't feel like enough stuff happens in it. Which is because we're just here sort of complaining, oh, why isn't there more of this and more of this? Which is ridiculous when you do consider the runtime that it managed to.
Yeah. The first one's got a lot more time jumps, doesn't it? Like the first film is set across quite a few years. In that it will just be like, oh, he's been in Sicily for a year. Whereas this is definitely a shorter frame of time. It's a lot more. It's a lot more kind of quieter scenes of just but they're kind of my favourite moments. Like after a scene of him and Tom talking for 5 minutes,
I
you can't say a lot's happened, but I feel like I've gained insight.
I
into the
do,
character.
yeah. When I do like quiet scenes, it's just there's only so much like mafia small talk.
Yeah, that is true.
I can deal with, because it's like there's so many conversations I feel that do just go nowhere and mean nothing. Just when I sit down. Not like every scene. Probably by the end, there's some details. But my point is, like the first 5 minutes of a scene, probably an overestimate. Just feel like a kind of how's the weather version of mafia talk.
I was going to say that like
disagree,
I think that it is the fact that the way this style of film is made it takes longer for things to happen, because scenes are they do have the come in, and then they end with putting on their clothes and can you get the door for me, and then I do see that
It's the Red Dead Redemption 2 animation.
Yeah, they do sort of. I do see that that is probably the reason that people like it, is because it has that sense of, as Ethan said, of being like a real place. Of you feel like a sense of immersion from it being so not even just slow, but the fact that it's just considered, I guess, thought out.
Yeah.
But it is also more realistic in the sense that it's just a bunch of conversations,
Yeah, exactly, and I completely agree with you, but I think the other appeal behind the second film is because of what Harry said earlier about the fact that it's the perfect sequel, because it takes the first film and just adds to it, and almost every aspect of the film is similar to the first in the sense of style and tone and performance, and it just is very, very close to the original, but you just see more of it, and that's why people love it as much as they do.
It improves on the first as well. When I watch the first, I feel every scene between Michael and Fredo has an extra element, because I know the fates of these characters.
Yeah.
And seeing the betrayal of God, I'm really bad with the names of the first one. I don't see anything.
We'll go on.
It's not Clemenza, it's the other one.
Tessio.
Seeing Tessio's betrayal, and then having seen scenes of Tessio with the young Vito, it means a lot more knowing how long they've kind of been together and stuck together. It's it definitely the phrase perfect sequel. I think it probably is, even though it's not my favourite film that is a sequel. I think it is probably the best example of what a sequel can do. Although there are kind of completely different examples of sequels, something like Portal 2, that just occupies a completely different space to the original. It's not so much an expansion on it, it's taking ideas the original had and just doing completely new things with them. But in terms of... Also, sequels weren't that commonplace in kind of 70s Hollywood. And I think this is the first film that was called the first film and then a number after it. This started that trend. And just calling it The Godfather Part 2 was almost kind of unheard of at the time. So it started the trend of sequels, which probably isn't a good trend.
Probably is slowly over time.
It's the Cod 4 thing, film that ruined films.
Morphed into the monstrosity that is the MCU. This is the original sin, Ethan. This is Eve eating the apple of oh no, didn't know what was to come.
Yeah.
I think I really do love...
Francis Ford Coppola opened Pandora's box in this film, didn't they?
Yeah, but the hope that came out of the end, that was Electric 2 Boogaloo, the Shaft trilogy,
that would have been a similar time, to be fair. No. But I really do love all films like the MCU, and my favourite genre is sci-fi. But there's just something about watching The Godfather Part 2 where I'm like this is proper filmmaking. This is just people in rooms, and the fact that they made people in rooms is kind of, for me anyway, is captivating and interesting. It's kind of perfect in that way.
I feel like a better people in room story is 12 Angry Men. I feel like that is the ultimate.
But 12 Angry Men is very much a play that has been adapted to the screen, and it's kind of its filmmaking is impressive, but it's not the reason it's perfect. It's not because it's shot. Whereas The Godfather Part 2 is pretty much a story that needs to be told on film. The Godfather novel, Mario Puzo wasn't entirely happy with it, and then he worked on the film to kind of perfect that story and get it across to the screen. And this is a film where so much is told without dialogue. You don't have big expositional monologues. Pretty much, you have a lot. There's a lot of information to kind of get across. So you do have lots of kind of people talking in rooms, but you also have a lot of kind of glances. You have a lot of just Michael on his own. So much can be communicated through the performances, and I feel like that's why I kind of... It's like a big boy film, It's like Coppola before he went on to make films like Jack and could just kind of give up, you know. He made arguably two of the greatest films of all time.
I think you're forgetting Apocalypse Now.
I mean, I haven't need to see Apocalypse Now, but I'm sure that is incredible because it's got like pretty much the cast of The Godfather.
I mean, it has Marlon Brando in the last 25 minutes, and the actor who plays Tom Hagen, Robert Duvall, is also in Apocalypse Now for a bit of it as well.
I do want to say
And
that
Harrison Ford's in Apocalypse Now as well.
See?
Come on, kids.
It's the best film made.
They
Haven't even
call
seen it
Apocalypse
yet.
now.
It's no Robocop. But what were you going to say, Tim?
I was just going to say, I do think that, as Jono said, with like the idea of like empathizing with these characters, because it feels like I think it's hard to. A lot of them are just kind of, you know, flawed in a way that is just like, oh, they're kind of just, you know, in it for power, which it is hard to relate to. I suppose in some sense, it's hard to be like, I really want, you know.
I too have had my crime family dismantled.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
At least with the Wolf of Wall Street, they were having fun.
Yeah.
They're fun. They see Superman.
But I would say that my favourite character is Tom Hagen, and I do love this film for finally like giving him what he deserves and being like, this is the voice of reason, and Michael giving him like the seat of power like fairly early on.
I mean, he is
It's
Michael's
such a-
moral compass. That is kind of the purpose of Tom Hagen.
I
It's
wouldn't
such
even
a
say
weird
moral
move.
compass. I would say he's just so reasonable. Like it's not that he isn't seeking, you know, power for the sake of just being powerful. It's more that he is like a sort of he always provides that voice of reason, that analysis, that just is this really worth it, you know?
It's like Ben Shapiro.
It annoys me that
he is the
this,
true facts and logic.
yeah, it kind of annoys me that this film makes me go, yeah, the lawyer, he's the good one. But yeah.
Seeing Tom
It's
Hagen
an
actually
odd-
be a lawyer as well is great. You know, those cover scenes.
It just sort of feels odd as well, making him like, because your previous setup is like, oh yeah, Tom, get out the room, we're gonna talk mafia now, and then it's just like, I'm gonna have you lead the mafia. It's like, you've told me to leave half the meetings. How do you think I can run this?
Tom would be a way better Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think like if there is one person I would like appoint as like world dictator, it would be Tom Hagen. You know, he would just manage it well.
Exactly. But like in terms of like the fact that Tom almost always agrees with Michael, apart from that when he's talking about wiping everyone out, you know, that's kind of Michael's point of no return. That's the season 2 episode 8 bit in Breaking Bad where Walter does something that I'm not going to spoil here, where pretty much all the audience are like, oh okay, you're beyond redemption now. That's kind of the point in which I can no longer empathise with you anymore. That's the point where he completely, I mean, just to say he pretty much lost his humanity by the first one, but like that's the point where he essentially becomes the devil, you know. Like Michael killing his brother in cold blood like that is kind of is such a sick act where he's beyond forgiveness. And then that scene which from of the four kind of the brothers on Thanksgiving, you know.
Yeah.
That contrasting with that, you know, like the warmth Fredo feels for him, and you get more Sonny, which I know Tony doesn't like Sonny, but for me,
fills me with nascent rage.
is it because you're secretly a hothead and he makes you feel uncomfortable about your anger?
Well, I wouldn't
you got a car,
burst
get
out.
stupid.
I wouldn't burst out with rage in any way that Sonny does, though.
Yeah.
I would be like, you know, I would dictate all my power to Tom Hagen. That's what I would do. I'd just be a vessel for him if I was Don anyway.
I get the feeling, I like Tom Hagen a lot, but I do get the feeling that all three of you like him,
It's
like a
just
whole lot more
it's
than
just
I do.
because everyone, you get the sense that their personal flaws are like interfering with their decision making, and then Tom Hagen is there with like what seems to be the obvious, reasonable thing to do, and he's always there. He's always like
It's
thank
because
you, Tom
he's
Hagen.
the one that's not Italian.
Some of my best friends are Italian Americans. Yeah, because that is Tom's flaw. It's that he's not really part of the family. He doesn't have that kind of Sicilian bloodline, the understanding of the traditions and customs, which the film itself comments are now outdated in the 1950s. You know, with Kay kind of leaving Michael, you've got the foreshadowing of kind of the death of that kind of like restrictive kind of patriarchal, like an abusive
The
relationship.
women are actually gonna do shit.
Yeah,
now.
she's essentially being liberated in that moment. And when she leaves Michael in that way, in that kind of.
I don't know.
It would never have happened in like the 30s and 40s. That kind
That is true, but I do get the feeling that I wouldn't entirely think that she was doing it out of like heroic. Like I don't think she was 100% good in what she did, because I do think she did commit an abortion out of spite, basically, which I don't know. It doesn't really frame her as like the best person, to me at least.
I don't know. I feel knowing who Michael is, I'm very much on her side at that point. And I want her to get out and be okay, because I know what this man is capable of. Wait, there's a Brooklyn Nine-Nine joke where they're talking about The Godfather, and Boyle just calls it the Diane Keaton movie. And then with every character, he's like, that's Diane Keaton's uncle.
That's great.
I mean, it feels now a bit of a problematic description of abortion. But
yeah, I mean, a film made in the 70s, set in the 50s.
I know I can't.
This isn't woke. I mean, that's it for the time.
But it's just
watching a film where the lead is like organised crime, and it's not even showing them as like the bad guys.
I think so too.
No.
Not really.
I think Vito.
They're not good
I think they do a good job making Vito sympathetic in the flashbacks. But that scene where he's working at the grocer.
I don't even have a problem with this, but it's not like the thing that they say is bad about Michael is the fact that he's doing organised crime. It's the fact that he's too mean about it. Yeah, but he's not a Tom Hagen.
With the Vito stuff, it is almost like you came to America. And you were just given nothing by America, like the only way for I mean, it's talking about like the mafia were real, It's essentially kind of trying to explain them and the experience of kind of the Italian immigrants at the time of like they kind of had to, because America didn't give a shit about them. So they almost were forced to do this, and then obviously with Michael, you've also got the death of the mafia. And like they're not around anymore. I mean, Trump likes to pretend they are.
I mean, that's one thing that I hear is like maybe you don't hear about organised crime anymore because they've gotten really good at it. That's the kind of thing that's like
they don't wear suits anymore. I mean, they don't look as good as Michael Corleone looks. I can say that much.
Probably just an underground.
Apart from that one scene,
trading Bitcoin is the mafia now.
Ethan, you know that one scene where Michael's wearing that red shirt with that kind of
looks like he's a retired golfer.
Yeah, wearing that beige jacket, that beige coat, and he comes at Kay's to say goodbye to the kids, and Mike comes in wearing the worst outfit of all time. And in the rest of the film, he's looked impeccable. And in that scene, I'm just like, Michael, what are you doing? That's when I lost. That's the moment I was talking about. Not when he kills his brother. When he wears that outfit, that's when he's beyond redemption.
The thing that I'm looking forward to for the third film is that I don't know much. I don't know if they redo this with Kay very much. But I know that there's sort of background characters that haven't really had the spotlight. Like Connie comes back and she has a lot more of a prominent role in the third film. So to explore those characters more, the ones that have kind of been in the shadow until so far. Like I do like Kay, and I do think Diane Keaton plays her really well.
She doesn't have anything to do.
Sorry, exactly. She doesn't have a very prominent role. She doesn't really have much of an impact or weight on the plot, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to watch the third film and see Connie, who is actually part of the family, doing something that matters to the story.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's a lot better than the first one, where a lot of the women just existed to be car bombed and or slapped, which does happen in this one. Kay does get slapped, but it feels like they're less passive in this film.
I mean, the third one is completely the opposite. Where I'm pretty sure the third one even passes the fucking Bechdel test. Like it's actually got female characters who have like their own motives and stuff.
I feel like I'm pretty sure I'm the only Sofia Coppola defender in the world, because everyone thinks her character is awful and no one plays, and she doesn't play her well. But I just remember thinking she was pretty good, and even actually I won't mention that.
Yeah.
But, I was just about to say.
Don't fucking say that.
But yeah, no, it will be a very refreshing change, that's for sure, with the third film. It's probably one of
the
the
film
best
is a really good film if you view it as an epilogue and not on the same. I mean, you guys are going to be different because you don't think part 1 and part 2 are as good as we do. But like, if you go in expecting like another Godfather part 2, you're obviously not going to get it, because not many films do that. There's not many sequels that are as good as the original. But part 3 is as a kind of epilogue, as a kind of, if Return of the Jedi was The Force Awakens, is what I say. Like, instead of like making Jedi a few years later, that they waited like 15 years and then like all the characters are old and kind of regretting their decisions of the past. It works in that sense, but it's very confusing.
The third film.
Yeah,
I remember very little of it.
it
my
ends with an
history.
opera. It's like an hour long.
Yeah, it's fun. My history with these films is the first time I watched The Godfather. I understood it like the plot a little bit, and then part 2 I understood none of the plot, and part 3 I understood even less of the plot. And now I've gone back to watch part 2, I understand it completely, but I still think part 3 I'm going to have trouble comprehending the plot, because I remember being so convoluted. I remember it being so... Well, I mean, what was it? Was it more the fact that they didn't really explain actions or give enough exposition, or was it just that it was very confusing?
I think if you pay attention to part 3, it probably is quite easy.
I remember nothing. I remember the Vatican.
Yeah, but
That's it. And oil. I remember oil was involved
Probably
somehow.
watched it when you were like 12, though, Ethan.
No,
Knowing-
I wasn't
knowing
that
your
young.
history with
No,
films.
yes, that is fair enough. I watched part 1 and part 2 a very long time ago, and part 2 I think I did wait a few years
Okay.
after to watch, because I knew of the status that film had as being quite a disappointing finale to a really, really successful and fantastically well-made trilogy of films, and that I was probably going to be let down, because I ever since I watched the first film, I thought the first one was fantastic, and the second one let me down a little bit, and I've changed my mind on it now. But I just remember part 3 being, I guess, good, but not nearly as great as the first 2 films, and that's the popular consensus.
I feel like
So that's
part
why I
3
waited that long to watch it.
part 3 is going to be Tony and Johnny's favourite. Because it's so different. I feel like it's so much more of a 90s film than a 70s film.
You know what? I agree with you. I also think it's because it's Michael Corleone. It's not Michael Corleone. It's Al Pacino's most kind of bold and not reserved performance. Like, he actually goes out and uses the muscles on his face. He actually kind of changes the way that he acts throughout the film. So there's more to latch onto. And because, like you say, he's playing a character who's a lot more reflective and he's a lot more realising of his past mistakes. It is easy to latch onto.
Should we
as a
wrap
character.
this podcast up?
Yeah.
Alright. I'll go first because obviously I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 because it's one of my favourite films. I'd say Al Pacino, talking about him being reserved, there are 4 or 5 scenes where he just goes for it in this film, and like those kind of intense outbursts from him are so kind of incredible. I really do enjoy his performance and the character of Michael Corleone. I know he's pretty obviously...
Hang on, really quickly, all I need to do is give it a 10 and we got a perfect 40. You can see that.
he's pretty obviously like a shitty guy, but like in the same way I enjoy watching There Will Be Blood to kind of see what Daniel Plainview does. I enjoy watching Michael Corleone. I've said everything I need to say. In my mind, you can't get better than The Godfather Part 2. It's 10 out of 10. It's better than the first. The first is I might change to a 10 eventually, because I did that when I had my stupid rule of I only gave a few 10 out of 10, but now I'm just giving that unlimited. I can't find too many bad things about The Godfather. But yeah, Part 2, it's better than the first. Go watch it. I mean, there's no way you'll listen to this if you haven't seen The Godfather Part 2. Damn.
Yeah, we have kind of spoiled it all.
Alright, who should go next? I'll go next.
Ooh.
I'll say that I do think I have come around. I think this one is better than the first one. I think once it gets going, it's a bit more interesting with the Hyman Roth like back and forth. Whereas the other one, I sort of lost the flow of it a bit after Salazzo was killed. But on the other hand, this one does take a lot longer. Its version of the wedding scene is like so long.
You got that great scene where you have Frank Pantangeli going up on stage drunk and trying to get the band going.
Yeah, I do like Frank Pantangeli. I think the thing with the in a kind of sick, twisted way, the way he commits suicide at the end, like from Tom Hagen just convincing him to do it. I'm like, you know what? They resolve that situation peacefully.
Yeah,
and I kind of like that.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
I think I'm not
I
sure.
thought you were going to say that came over as too rushed, as in
No.
Pantangeli's conclusion. So
No, I do
that's my
like
mistake.
it. Yeah, I think again you just I'm not sure if I would drop the first one to a 6 and give this one a 7. If I might do that at some point in Retcon 2, but for now I'll give this one a solid 8 out of 10. I think
That is wild. I mean, Letterboxd should give it like 1 star.
yeah, I'll probably give it like a 3 star on that box.
I'm glad you didn't hate it as much as I thought you would.
Yeah, I think it did win me over eventually. I would give it. It's the kind of thing where I definitely see why a lot of people, not just Harry, you know, but like the wider sort of critical community.
Oh yeah, because I'm the only person who likes this film. No one's even heard
not
of
just
it.
Harry, you know. But like I do see why a lot of people would give it a 10. It's like if I was like really into mafia stuff, you know, like in the same way Ethan's really into cowboy stuff, which is why he likes the Quad-Trilogy, not spaghetti western trilogy, the other food-based trilogy. He really likes cowboy stuff, you know. He really likes that whipping the cloak around. If I really liked, you know,
I really like him walking into a village followed by 3 men turning around and shooting.
If I really liked Michael saying, "Get the door," you know, and
Wearing suits.
Yeah, wearing suits. I probably I could see it.
Just throwing in random Italian words into like dialogue to sound cool.
I feel like it's more when speaking Italian they throw random English words in.
I don't know. Consigliere is still the great one.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
glad that's just in people's
I
lexicon.
quite like. They have the other one, Pesonovante, as well. They say that one quite a lot, I think.
The thing is, I don't know what any. I'm sure if you're Italian, you get more out of this film than.
Well, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure consigliere just is like lawyer or family friend.
I don't
It's
know.
one of
he's-
those.
The way they describe it, it's kind of like a helper, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's only used in terms of the mafia.
They define them in the book. Yeah.
Johnny, do you want to do your score, or do you want to go last? Leave us on a down note.
Yeah, I feel you won't want to be left on a down note. Yeah, so do I?
I mean, Tony.
Do you like it more than the
Yeah.
first?
Yeah.
I do.
So you gave the first. I don't know what you can lower the first two. In fairness, you could give this a 1 then.
Yeah, because I'm in a weird situation where I'm like, yeah, I think, you know, I did prefer this one to the first one, but I'm thinking it's either a 4 or a 5. So
Depending, because if the first one is going to be lowered from a 6 to a 5, I don't know.
I don't know. I might just lower them both to 4s.
Fair enough.
That's kind of how I'm feeling. Yeah, I was thinking 6, and then I don't know, just an hour conversation about it just made me realise how uninterested I am in this film and how it took 3 hours of my life plus more if you include the first one.
It also took 3 hours and like 20 minutes.
It's taken more because of this podcast.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, that's a 2. That's not
Think about
4.
it. Wait, no. Can you put it back to the way it was? Because you have to get it in retcon, otherwise we forget it's been changed. Sorry.
Oh, keep it red.
Yeah. Keep it
It
red.
already is red.
Yeah, keep it red, but revert it back to a 6. And really lower it in retcon. That's the best way to do it.
Right.
I mean, you could just lower it on the record now.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought I'd do.
Oh, okay.
Like I've said, it's going to be a 4.
All right, retcon 2. We have to remember that.
Yeah.
I'll make it a different colour. Ethan, do you want to review it?
I don't really think I have to. I mean, my rating's already been put in. I'm quite happy with it. So,
What, 1?
yeah.
On screen for you guys now.
Yeah. It's the interesting thing is that I was. I don't know if I'm going to do this, but I was originally going to give this film a 9 out of 10. But hearing Tony talk about this film and then giving an 8 makes me want to give it a 10 because I know that I enjoy it a lot more than Tony. So I probably will give it a 9.
In fairness, I might give it like drop it all to 6 and 7, but
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I came around on it. You know,
That's
it did
fair.
take 6 hours, which is the combined run time.
It's in the 30 club, guys.
Yeah.
Godfather 1 didn't make it. Actually, it did, but then you just lowered it.
But I'm definitely like glad, Harry, that you decided to actually sit down and watch it with me, because otherwise I wouldn't have been bothered to rewatch it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I could just be sit here giving it like a 7, maybe even a 6. So I'm really glad that I watched it and I changed my mind on it, because it definitely.
So sorry we didn't watch it with you, Tony, but I feel like I had to do a one-on-one with Ethan to make him like it. Part 3 we can all watch together. I don't mind.
I still can't believe you gave it an 8, Tony. That really has surprised me.
I was comparing it to Mirror's Edge. That's my A barrier, and I was like, I'm really comparing apples and oranges
Yeah.
here, aren't I?
I feel like
My
you came
favourite bit's the
down.
bit where Michael runs away from the blues on the wire. And QB, he's run away.
I just feel, Tony, that you came down more on the negative than the positive, so it just surprises me that you did it.
I was playing the devil's advocate. I was being the devil's consigliere.
Yeah, alright.
James Acaster
It's
thing, you
literally-
have to specify that you're playing Devil's Advocate.
You're
otherwise,
playing James Acaster.
otherwise it just sounds like your own horrific opinion.
It is literally Tom Hagen. He might be one of my favourite film characters. characters.
Do you just love Robert Duvall? Do you love how he's looked 40 his entire life?
No. In all seriousness, I think if Tony sat down and watched Apocalypse Now, he wouldn't like Robert Duvall as much because his whole gimmick in that film is he is just this crazy colonel who goes into battle with an army of helicopters playing Ride of the Valkyries through these massive 20-foot
sounds
speakers.
really good though.
We just realised that Tony loves Robert Duvall. This is going to be like Mediate 2, we're going to have like a Robert Duvall spin-off special, just all of his entire filmography.
I think it is just the fact that it is a film that contrasts characters like Sonny and Michael with Tom Hagen. And it's just the fact that it just shows how people's motivations work, and everyone else is such a flawed human being, corrupted by the original sin of sequels. And there's Tom Hagen who is there.
We need Hagen, a Godfather story.
I'm just amused that you're.
Oh wait, he's not going to like part 3, is he?
Oh yeah, I'm afraid to tell you that Robert Duvall would not come back for part 3, so they kill him off screen.
Oh, that's a shame.
And that's one of the big problems with part 3 is that you miss Tom.
Definitely.
Johnny, what were you going to say?
I'm just amused that Tony's numerical liking for this film is equal to my liking of the two of them.
Yeah, that's crazy. Can I just say, the idea of having a character suggested then tangibly that your family would be alright and taken care of if you took the easy way out, and then in an earlier scene having that character's brother come along for support just to show how much this guy cares about his own brother, I think is really, really clever.
Yeah.
And having this idea of you knowing how much a character cares about like a sibling just from having them reverse their testimony in one scene like that it just makes sense that he would commit suicide to have his brother taken care
It's
of.
quite smart. And I like the fact that you can trust Tom Hagen to stick to his word. Can we change it so that I give an 8 out of 10 to Tom Hagen? I give The Godfather Part 2 like a 6,
I'm taking the 8 for part 2, but alright, should we end this podcast?
Yeah.
Tom Hagen.
Tom Hagen.
Tom Hagen.
Yeah, God.
Beautiful, beautiful boy. Beautiful boy.
He goes to Hollywood.
Massacred my boy.
Mhm.
Tom Hagen.